Thank you. Now, from royalty to rock stars, he's captured some of the most famous faces of our time. Many will have seen his work in the international press over the years, but few will actually know that David Katz, the photographer behind so many striking images, is actually legally blind. Yeah,
he was worried that that could actually curtail his career. So David made a decision to keep it hidden from most people until now. We'll speak to him in a moment on the sofa, but first let's have a look at some of a new documentary about his work.
He was and is an amazing photographer. I think he has an amazing eye.
By the time I was 16, I was already working for the local newspaper. By the time I was 19, I had turned professional and was working at the Daily Mail in Fleet Street.
David by then was already very well known and they knew his skill level.
If I knew the job and I wanted it done properly, I'd go to him and no one else.
I worked very hard to develop my skill as a professional photographer, and I was able to photograph royals, politicians, celebrities.
He was more than just a photographer. You know, I worked with photographers who came and took their photos and went, but David, he was passionate.
You can get lucky, but David was consistent. David was consistent in all his photography.
The one small problem with that story is that from birth, I have actually been legally blind.
Oh, and David is here with us now. It's an amazing story. Just take us back to when you were little, because your mum and dad knew when you were very small, didn't they, that you had problems with your sight? They
did. They knew from about 3 months old. My grandmother spotted that there was some movement in my eyes, and they got to a specialist straight away at Great Ormond Street Hospital.
So, David, what can you see, and what can't you see?
Well, that's a great question, but it's obviously always relative because, you know, I'm not familiar with how other people see. But as an example to people that would sit in a doctor's surgery, an optician, you know, most people could read down to, say, the second from bottom row with or without glasses. In my right eye, I would not be able to actually see the actual box where the letters are on. And with my left eye, on a very good day, I might be able to read the top letter.
Wow.
So that gives people an idea, but it's also to do with depth perception and contrast and photophobia, which is lights, bright lights.
And you found that photography, or looking through a camera, in some ways opened up a new world to you, didn't you?
Yes, it opened up. I always wanted I always saw things in a certain way in my head, and once I got my hands on a camera, I was able to see things the way I feel, more like the way I feel that you guys would see.
We can see some of the pictures you've taken here. These are some of the politicians you've taken over the years. I mean, do you have, when you look back at these, I see you smiling now as you're looking at these. Did it take you back to the moment, to the occasion, to what was happening around?
Yeah, every picture has its own personal story for me.
You've got Tony Blair playing the guitar. Run us through this one.
Yeah, I mean, I was only one of 2 photographers allowed into that school to take pictures, and he was a lot more comfortable than he might have been in front of the mainstream media. And they gave him a guitar, and you know, you all know that he loves music and he loves the guitar. So he started to play, and I don't think he was even bothered about the pictures as a photo op. He just played, and that's why it's so natural.
We've got some pictures as well of the royalty, including the Queen, who you photographed over the years. What do you want out of a photograph?
I just want to be able to portray to the person viewing it what I'm actually seeing when I'm taking it.
And they're wonderful images. You're very good also at sport. What are you looking for in sport photographs?
I always loved action. As it said in the film, you know, I had to watch football or sport with binoculars. So I was used to looking through lenses. And from the time I can remember, I just loved action and capturing a moment and capturing the ball. And also, it's probably the thing that you push yourself hard as a photographer, to capture that moment, and to do it with a visual impairment was something that I really liked. Enjoyed the challenge and being able to prove I could do it, because as it says in the film, there's no such word as can't.
And the wonderful thing here is that nobody who you were working with knew that you talk about a challenge. It was your personal challenge. Nobody else knew.
That's correct, and there was a reason for that. I wasn't hiding it. It was just something that I kept separate, because I always wanted to get to this day where I could speak publicly about it to help children and the parents of children with visual impairments in a way that I didn't receive and my parents didn't receive when I was growing up. And this is why I created Through My Lenses, because the information and the accessibility to the condition is actually not as good as you think it would be. There are a lot of kids that are still being told you can't do this the same way my parents were, and that's not acceptable to me, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure that kids through the film can see that there's no such word as can't, and if a photographer can achieve international acclaim with a visual impairment and a legal blindness, then anybody can do anything, and that's the message of Through My Lenses.
It's a very powerful
message
as well. You know, when you're sitting down with people like Amy Winehouse in the past and others, some of these celebrity photographs you've taken, how much of your job is sort of putting them at ease and that the chatter and the patter that goes on before you then try and find the snap that really tells the story?
It's as important as your job is at putting your people at ease. It's very important, because if someone's not at their ease, as you both well know, they're not going to come across naturally. If someone's comfortable, they're going to come across a lot more naturally. And Amy was particularly uncomfortable that night, and she was uncomfortable generally in front of cameras. But it was just me and her on the stage that night, and she just did her thing, and once she did that, her true talent and gift came through the same way I feel mine does when I'm behind a camera.
The intensity of that photograph is really something. And so as we've mentioned, so many of your friends didn't know, people who you work with, and in the documentary, you go and tell them. Was that a big thing for you, the moment to actually think, right, I'm actually going to go back and tell people this is my life? It
was massive. It was what I'd geared to for a very long time, and I had to get myself ready, with inside work and physically to get to that stage where I was ready to talk about it. And I first spoke to one of my closest friends who's in the film, called Mark Silver, about it, and my friend Chris Morgan already knew. Sharon Jaffa and Danny Caro didn't, so it was a big shock. We caught that on camera, but and through this, I'm working with Mark in partnership to actually bring the whole story about through his company Square Rock Limited, and this has led me to meeting Vladimir Klitschko. And you're going to be working with him now, aren't you? Yeah, all being well. He has a wonderful organisation called Challenge Management.
Here's one of your pictures of Vladimir.
Yeah, we did that recently. I had a great deal of respect for him, and we were both featured through Square Rock in the same magazine recently in Germany. And there was the opportunity to meet him a few weeks ago, and out of retirement, he wants to be doing exactly this to help motivate people to show what can be achieved from adversity. He came from adversity, and he came to be the champion of the world, and he retired with huge dignity. And I love his story and his background, and he loves mine. And we're hopefully going to be working together. I've actually been invited by him tonight to an event, which is something I'm very much looking forward to. But it's so important to me to be able, through the film, Through My Lenses, to be able to get the message out there that everything is possible and there's no such word as can't.
It's a brilliant message, and it's really lovely to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. I've seen the film. It's called Through My Lenses, and it is available to watch online. Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
It's a really powerful message, David.